Known familiarly as the Cold War, it spilled over into actual wars in various regions of the world and brought humanity perilously close to a conflict involving nuclear weapons. Its peaceful termination towards the end of the 20th century was an occasion for relief, giving rise to explicit calls for the establishment of a new global order. This was the third moment when universal peace seemed within grasp. Efforts to put in place new systems for international cooperation and to strengthen existing ones received great impetus as a series of world conferences on themes of importance to humanity's future were convened by the United Nations. New opportunities for consensus emerged, and the spirit of collaboration propelling progress also found expression in the mandates given to certain international institutions charged with administering justice. This purposeful, deliberate process culminated at the turn of the century in the Millennium Forum, a meeting of representatives of over 1,000 civil society organizations from more than 100 countries, followed by the Millennium Summit, an unparalleled gathering of world leaders which led to agreement on a set of objectives representing a shared ambition of humanity. Styled the Millennium Development Goals, they became rallying points for collective action in the ensuing years. These various advances, despite their many limitations and imperfections, and the horrifying conflicts that continued to unfold during this time, stand, nonetheless, as signs of a widespread, gradual but inexorable rise in global consciousness on the part of the Earth's peoples and their attraction to universal justice, to solidarity, to collaboration, to compassion, and equality. So that was paragraph 2, marking the 3 significant movements toward peace in the last 100 years, starting with the Peace Conference and the forming of the League of Nations, and then the UN and a system of economic institutions. Is that what I wrote? Yes, international economic institutions and international law and human rights. And the third was the Millennium Forum and Millennium Summit and Millennium Development Goals. Paragraph 3, which I called How We Got to Today. As the present century opened, new challenges began to loom. With time, these intensified, leading to a retreat from the promising steps forward with which the previous century had closed. Today, many of the dominant currents in society everywhere are pushing people apart, not drawing them together. Even as global poverty of the most extreme form has decreased, political and economic systems have enabled the enrichment of small coteries of grossly exorbitant wealth, a condition that fuels fundamental instability in world affairs. And we're definitely seeing that. The interactions of the individual citizen, governing institutions, and society as a whole are often fraught as those arguing for the primacy of one or the other show more and more intransience in their thinking. So I thought that was really interesting. Okay, the interactions of individual citizens, governing institutions, and society as a whole are often fraught. And what does that remind you of if you are familiar with Baha'i life? The individual, the institutions, and the community. And here the house is saying that the interactions between these similar groupings, I guess, or identifications in society at large are fraught, and people are arguing for the primacy of one or the other. It should be all about the individual. It should be all about government. It should be all about society as a whole. And that also made me think of false dichotomies. It's like we're arguing about the exclusivity of something that actually doesn't exist. That, at least if Baha'i community life is a model for what the world can be, these are all equally important elements of a functioning whole that need to work together, and not the primacy of one or the other. All should be respected. That's what came to me when I read this. Now we're getting into some stuff that I kind of had a hard time understanding, so maybe you can leave in your comments like what you think the house is referring to. We're still in paragraph 3. Religious fundamentalism is warping the character of communities, even nations. The failings of so many organizations and institutions of society have understandably led to a decline in public trust. But this has been systematically exploited by vested interests seeking to undermine the credibility of all sources of knowledge. And both of those, the religious fundamentalism and these forces that are exploiting these this instability, I put notes. I'm just wondering what exactly they're referring to. That last one, I can think of a certain foundation that run by an individual that's been outlawed in certain parts of Europe that funds protests and vandalism situations like Ferguson and stuff, and that came to mind. But I don't know. Certain shared ethical principles, which seemed to be in the ascendant at the start of this century, are eroded. What do you guys think they're talking about, these ethical principles? I guess the collaborative mindset? Threatening the prevailing consensus about right and wrong. That in various arenas has succeeded in holding humanity's basest tendencies in check. And the will to engage in international collective action, which 20 years ago represented a powerful strain of thinking among world leaders, has been cowed, assailed by resurgent forces of racism, nationalism, and factionalism. Paragraph 4. Thus do the forces of disintegration regroup and gain ground. So be it. The most weighty sentence in this whole thing. The unification of humanity is unstoppable by any human force. The promises made by the prophets of old and by the author of the cause of God himself testify to this truth. Yet, the course humanity takes to achieve its destiny may very well be torturous. The tumult raised by the contending peoples of the earth threatens to drown out the voices of those noble-minded souls in every society who call for an end to conflict and struggle. As long as that call goes unheeded, there is no reason to doubt that the world's current state of disorder and confusion will worsen, possibly with catastrophic consequences, until a chastened humanity sees fit to take another significant step, perhaps this time decisive, towards enduring peace. It's the end of paragraph 4. A thought to leave you with is, how can we individually be part of ending conflict and struggle? Because our thoughts will spread. It's the idea anyway. All right, you guys, I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.